Hello, I'm Mr. Pibbles, and welcome back to our Challenge Park series here in Planet Coaster 2. And as the boat of Splash Boating comes to very kindly run us over, you may be wondering why we are back here after the last episode where, we started our gardens, built a maze, all of that. Why are we back here? Well, that's because I, in my infinite wisdom, got a little bit done off camera over here, just because I felt there was a little bit that needed doing. So the queue line for this is now completely revamped, which is quite fun, with a bit of the outside of the building, but most importantly, we have a full station building for this now, which I really like this, and it feels kind of very big and grand and actually much better aligned with what I was looking for, as well as obviously this new sign here with that bit of piping. So, on a side note aside, what are we doing today? Well, we are moving back over here to our gardens, our historic part of the park, shall we say. And with all of this foliage now down here in the maze, you can go through it and see all of that, but we're moving on to something a little bit different as we move on to our next of the few gardens here, and we are putting a couple of rides in this episode. So without further ado, let's get on with the episode. Roll that time lapse. Indeed, hello, it is me here with the time lapse. Slightly ill, but there we go. Now, what are we doing this episode? Well, as I just so rightly said, we are expanding out our gardens and we are adding the sort of brand new expansions to that. I say brand new, as you will know if you watched the last episode, and all of its very in all of its boring glory. I did explain a little bit of the history behind these gardens and behind the beginnings of Pibbleville, and actually these are some of the oldest parts of the park, which is fun. But yeah, so we will get into a bit more history in a bit, but where are we starting today? Well, we've had our other two gardens. We've started with the Mediterranean garden, and we've kind of continued that on with the tropical garden. And here we are now with our next one, the Tiger Garden. And this is the first one to actually contain a ride. That is right, it is the Ferris wheel. And I thought actually this would be a really nice addition here. And I thought it would work. And no, I won't really get into the history quite yet, because I feel like we can do that in a bit. But kind of, if you did enjoy a little bit of what I was doing with the history last episode, then please let me know, because I absolutely adore making kind of lore and history for this place. It's kind of interesting to just come in and try doing something new and kind of adding lore to this fictional place that I'm building in real time, but also kind of retroactively going, okay, so this is what the history of the area is, and I'm really enjoying that. But there we go. And as I say, this is sitting just off from our Spook Garage and Spook Manor, and yeah, we are kind of getting all these hedges in. There's not really much I can say about getting gardens in, so why don't we talk a little bit of history? So, I think where we left off last time was in 1883, where our wonderfully, slightly capitalistic protagonist, Arthur Parsley, kind of began the latest and biggest stage of his plan to kind of take all of this land, make it into a singular holiday destination, beginning with plans for this garden. And there was actually one piece of the story that we didn't mention at that point, and that is that he took on an apprentice at the time, young Timothy Jensen, who kind of worked as his apprentice during this time, which is fun. And kind of it is Timothy Jensen that brings us a lot of our kind of developments in terms of kind of making this more amusement focused. So skipping forward a couple of years, kind of it is Jensen that gives us the ideas of making this sort of more of an amusement park than anything really. And it is him that installs the carousel, which was the very first attraction in the area, kind of very historic and all of that. And kind of further plans were drawn up, and I won't get into those further plans because that is the next episode, which I don't want to get too ahead of myself. But one of the other things that he invests in is the steam-powered swing. Kind of before this, the self-propelled swing had been a staple of theme park amusement parks and circuits beforehand, but in the 1880s, kind of they started becoming powered by steam, and this is where kind of our lovely Timothy Jensen comes in and invests in one of these steam-powered swings, and he themes up the gondola a little bit to a naval ship of the era, renaming it the HMS Victory, which is quite fun, and that stands on the site where the Victorious stands now. And that is actually because in 1894 the Victory is destroyed and replaced with the newer and bigger pirate ship model that sort of came about within the 1890s, and it is in 1894 that they install the pirate ship model. This is sort of the second version of the Victory, which is now named the Victoria. Not the Victorious yet, that we still had many years to wait until that, but this was kind of the first sort of step in that direction. And the last thing I'll mention for the moment is that in 1896, Jensen installs the Ferris wheel into the Tiger Garden after witnessing that it was the least popular of all of Parsley's gardens. Which is unfortunate because, you know, it is quite a nice garden, but I suppose it doesn't quite have the allure of, say, a maze or the tropics or the Mediterranean, so I understand why it sort of needed that push, and I think that the Ferris wheel was the perfect push, and yes, we will get on to properly theming that up in a bit. But again, this has just been a really nice sort of exercise of coming in and seeing what I can do with sort of the scenery and nature themes within this game, because there's so many of them and I never really get a chance to get in and play around with them as much as I should. Hence why I came in and played around with it here. And I really like some of the heather pieces that are included alongside this. You know, the heather strips are really nice to just kind of stick down and just make everything feel a little bit nicer, which is quite fun. And the trees are quite nice. You know, this was one of my favourite themes in Planet Zoo when it came to nature, which is fun because I always remember that third scenario, kind of where you're situated in a valley and you've got the river running next to you and you have to build a zoo, and I just really like it. And again, if you do want to see me do anything from Planet Zoo, then please let me know. You know, I'm really enjoying the challenge part, but I do want to expand out at some point and see what I can do in terms of other things. So I'm wanting to do a bit of Planet Zoo, possibly start a second park. I'm really drawing up plans for a studio theme park, so if you would like to see that, then please let me know. Now we are over here at the Ferris wheel, just colouring it up a little bit, which is quite fun. And yeah, we've gone for starters for a very sort of brown and yellow and green. That does change, and it does become mostly sort of brown, with the gondolas being shades of brown and red, which is fun. Now, this is the other thing I'm adding into this Viking walled fence, because I thought like I felt like it fitted the tiger area the best. Sort of, it feels like very much a very scenic, very rustic fence to have, and I just think it works quite well for what I'm having it do, and it just does look quite nice, kind of surrounding our historic Ferris wheel and all of that. But yeah, in terms of this project now, we are slowly chugging along. I do feel like I have slowly been getting better at the game while playing this. I feel like that is one of the big things about this series, is that it's really sort of pushed me to almost become a little bit better at the game. And I am glad that it has kind of helped me as such to become bigger, become better, and kind of challenge myself for all of you lovely viewers who do keep watching me. I know that the subscriber count is ticking up. Last time I checked, we were at 26, which is massive, you know? When I started this, I didn't know how many I'd get. I didn't really want to get many. I was very much in a stage of, let's just make these videos of what I enjoy and see if anyone wants to enjoy them with me. And it seems that there are some of you who do want to come along and join me on the journey, and I can only thank you for that. But yeah, so we are now at the classic stage of theming a flat ride for me, where we just come in, we foliage over the base, and we put in some rocks. It's a classic for me. It is a classic. I always do it. Enough said, you know. That is just about everything that needs to be said on the matter. But yeah, it is quite fun, this, to be fair. And it's coming in and trying things that I never would really try otherwise. Now, what are we doing now? I had a really fun idea that I wanted to put a sign on the front of the Ferris wheel that said the Tiger Garden Ferris wheel, as sort of like a bit of a big historic sign. And I really like the way that it looks. And then I had an idea, and I think that idea is where I decided to cut the footage, because, you know, there's only so much I can do in an episode. I know I don't really kind of cut the episodes up, but this episode I think needed cutting because it was already quite long. And you don't want to see the tedious process of me putting lights onto the sign of the Ferris wheel, which you will see a little bit later. But okay, where are we going now? Well, we are starting our final sort of big garden out of the 4. And this is sort of the big kicker that kind of really sparked these gardens as something more than just a set of gardens. And I know we've got the teacups there that need a little bit more power, so let's put more power into our little generation facility over here. I really need to make more of these because we are slowly running out of power, but there we go. Yes, we have stuck in some teacups, and we will play around with them a little bit later. But for now, it is a fun process of getting these hedges in and around. You know, I didn't need to include these, but I thought it would be quite fun to show me putting down all the fences and all the hedges. And yeah, don't worry, that power distributor will not be visible by the time we are done with this area, which, spoiler alert, we aren't finished with it by the end of this episode. It is something that we will go to finish within the next couple of episodes. But so let's put some path in and around our teacups. Unfortunately, these aren't as historic as some of the other rides here, because, you know, the teacups only really existed since the 50s, so these came in the mid-60s, but there we go. That is neither here nor there. And you can see me there looking up some stuff in the background for reference because of the history of this specific area. Now, going a little bit back, obviously we had our whole 1883 plans to make the garden. Those were a little bit changed in 1884 when when kind of during the process of excavating these gardens, the Roman ruins were sort of found to be under the sort of excavated in the process. These were found, these were excavated, and all that, and yeah, they were found from a historic Roman villa, which we will get into in a bit. And that sparks a new idea. And by archaeologizing this site, Arthur Parsley went, I can turn these ruins into the tourist destination. Sort of making them a bit exotic, making them a bit big. And he was inspired by some marble signs that were dug up in 1885. And the entire sort of area was rebranded into Pibbleville as a historic, foreign and exotic destination. We will get introduce those signs in a bit, with the World Gardens providing the start of a new era for this area. So you may be thinking, what is this Roman villa all about? Well, fear ye not. I have thought about this. So where does this history come from? Well, spanning all the way back to 96 AD. Yes, we're going there. I thought about history. Going all the way back to 96 AD, we meet a man called Potitus Pisius Nonius, and he moves to Roman Britain by the prospect of new shores, bringing his servants and the like to help him build a new country house. This being his villa, and in 97 AD, Nonius Villa is completed for Potitus to live in. Servants, slaves, and private builders begin sort of expanding out and building the infrastructure around the villa for their families to live. Now, by 114 AD, the village surrounding Nonius Villa had expanded to the point that it was attracting people to come and live, work, and trade around the area, which is fun. Now, in 148 AD, Pontitus dies, passing the village and the villa onto his daughter, Pisia Nonia. In 157 AD, copper was struck in the mines around Nonius Villa, striking an idea in Pisia's mind. And in 158 AD, the conversion of Nonius Villa into a clasp-making factory is made. It employed women around the place to assemble, while smiths were employed to shape these pieces of metal, and the place was renamed from Nonius Villa to Fibulae Villa. And kind of this whole sort of town existed and worked and all that right up until 406 AD, when the men in the town were enlisted to help efforts in Gaul. And in 408 AD, there were a number of Saxon raids that devastated the Fibulae Villa surrounding area, and any remaining survivors just moved to Rome to escape, leaving effectively this perfectly preserved Roman villa kind of completely and utterly just destroyed and kind of abandoned, ready for someone to, in the 1800s, excavate it, which is where we get to. And actually that is where the name Pibbleville comes from. That Fibulae Villae is sort of where the idea for the name came from, because, Arthur Parsley, he's a clever man. He knows that Brits want, something exotic, and what's more exotic than butchering of Roman words and the absolute getting wrong of Latin for his own gain. What could be better than that? And we will get onto that in a little bit, but first, let's actually talk about what we're doing. So I have built a few of the ruins around, and we will be doing more. These are all sort of inspired by real Roman ruins in Britain. I believe that the ones we've done just there are inspired by a set in Windsor, and sort of it all expands from there, and sort of we will be getting a whole load more done. But But speaking of this historic sign, let us get in just a little bit here and there after I have decided to get some ruins in. Because I get sidetracked very, very easily. And so here I am, sort of getting a very hasty wall in, as if it's been reconstructed by Victorians who didn't know what it actually looked like. Ooh. But yeah, coming in there and just placing down some walls, and then finally using this Temple Ruins piece, we can get in and we can start on this ever so historic Roman sign that inspired the entirety of Pibbleville. And you may be wondering to yourself, well, what does this sign look like? What did the Victorians see that inspired the name Pibbleville? Well, I've said already, it's Fibulae Villa, and you may think to yourself, well, that's too different. Who would ever? Well, considering that this is probably what they saw, sort of a very much a very ambiguous lettering system that sort of made it look a little bit more like, well, not fibula, but more Pibula, which then went, ooh, that sounds like Pibble, which is much easier for for Victorian brains to pronounce and all that. I don't know. I just thought it'd be fun to put some fake lore into the world of this silly little park. But there we go. So moving on, we are finally actually putting some theming into our teacups here. And these are sort of themed into the ruins themselves. This is sort of meant to be kind of a middle, sort of something to bring this entire section together. And yeah, basically what we're doing is we're building this canopy out of ruins, and then the teacups themselves are going to be sort of in the same colours as them, and they're going to feel sort of very tied together with all of that. And yeah, it is just meant to feel slightly fun. I did toy with the idea of making it completely circular in the roof, but I thought actually if we make it instead sort of this hexagon, I think that could be quite fun. Now, scaling up these column lintels, these are forming the basis for our canopy, and again we can just duplicate and it looks quite nice. And then coming in, we can also I try to make that bigger to see if I can get it to fit. It's just too big if it's big, so instead what we do is we take these small ones and we take these ones, we make them smaller, and we put 6 of them around the middle, and I think it looks quite good. So I can't complain about that. Now, I toy with the idea of making the top of this a lot more ruined, and then I instead come up with the idea that actually maybe we could cover it with canopies, because that is something that is going to be very, very relevant in the coming update. So, at the time of recording, I believe it was either yesterday or the day before, that the next update for Planet Coaster was revealed, and they revealed many things that were coming to the game, including improvements to some of the coasters from the Sorcery Pack, as well as a couple of other small bits and pieces in terms of fixes. There are also some fixes to Challenge Mode, which should be quite interesting to look at once we sort of get to that point. But other than that, the other kind of the major thing that I'm interested in, aside from the sort of Christmas and festive pack returning, which should be quite fun, that had some really nice pieces, and we can use them all again. I don't know whether or not I will do something in the vein of everything I've done before with the Halloween park and doing a countdown to Christmas. I don't know whether I'll do something like that, especially because kind of the amount of work it took to do. But what we will do is we will definitely have a look at some of the pieces and have a look at maybe doing a little bit of an episode of a mini build with them, and possibly look at bringing some of these pieces into the park itself for a little bit of a Christmas overlay here and there, which should be fun. And the other thing we're getting is weather, kind of massive weather updates. We're getting 2 new weather types, that being the storms and snow. Now, snow is going to be something interesting to look at within this park. I think it will be really fun to get in and see what snow looks like within the context of kind of a park that I've built, and I think it'll just make everything look slightly pretty. And then the other thing about it really is kind of coming in and sort of figuring out really what, with thunderstorms, how much the guests are able to tolerate, because they will now like things that are covered, hence why we are putting a cover over the top of this, which is quite fun. Now we are slowly approaching the end of this episode, where I know this has been a very, very long one, but we've got quite a bit done in this episode, and I really like where we've gone and the amount of lore that we have added. So, where does that leave us? Well, real time. Okay, welcome back to Real Time, where you meet us on top of Spook Manor. You can probably hear the music, but we're mostly here to look at the wonderful sign that I've done for the Tiger Garden Ferris wheel, kind of on that. But yes, it is time to look at, indeed, what we have done today. Of course, we made this the Tiger Garden Ferris wheel. Apologies, my mic just decided to fall over on me. I apologise for that. Let's turn the lights on, and hopefully that won't happen again. But yes, so as you can see, we've got the Tiger Garden Ferris wheel here in the Tiger Garden, and I really like this area. It looks really nice. And then coming through here, of course, we have the start, the proper start to the Roman ruins that obviously are making up the majority of this section of the park. So of course, if you have enjoyed this episode, then please feel free to give me a like, give me a comment, possibly even a subscribe if I'm lucky enough, and I will see you within the next episode. Ta-ta. Roll that outro.